coming up this week on Success Won't Come Calling.
And then it was on to meet the main man. So
Richard Branson?
Yeah, we pulled up at this gaff in Holland Park, £8 million house, and he just walked straight over to me, lifted my leg onto this coffee table and started shining my shoe with his shirt. And he said, "So what have I got to do to get you?" I thought, how good's this?
I tell you what, he clearly wants
19-year-old Scally from Oldham, and I've got a billionaire polishing my shoes here, trying to sign me.
Hello friends, Simon Gibson here. Welcome to SWCC. If you like the podcast, please click subscribe and you'll find out the moment every one of our episode drops. I'm really excited about this week's episode because I've got one of the greats in the sport of rugby league as my guest today. It's Paul Sculthorpe. Paul's career has seen him achieve everything there is to achieve domestically. Also, he's captained Great Britain. He's toured with the Lions. And in 2018, he was recognised for his services to rugby and charity as well by an MBE. Paul's achievements have not stopped following his retirement from rugby, and he's moved into the business world through his businesses Evolve Brand Sport and Rhino Rugby. But he's also a full-time coach with England, helping the next generation of rugby players achieve what he did. Paul, welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Very well, Simon. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks.
Well, we really appreciate your time, which must be very scarce because you're still committed to the game of rugby in terms of your work with England. But you're combining that with a very successful business career as well. Let me ask you first of all, when you reached the end of your rugby career, was it clear to you that there was a long-term future in coaching? And if it was, what made you also take the leap into business? Yeah,
no, it's probably the opposite, to be honest. My decision I retired at 31, and I had the last 2 years of my career were plagued by injury. Nothing that I couldn't get over. It would just seem to be one thing after another. You know, I had issues with lower back forever, like pulling hamstrings, calves, little things that keep you out of games in short periods, and that all got frustrating. And I decided to call it a day at the end of 2008. But I'd set up in business and done a lot of things throughout my career, ready for obviously when that time comes. And I'd really got the urge to do a bit more business. So when I retired, my actual business partner now was the chief exec of Saints. So he knew the stuff that I'd done, the network of people that I had, and he said, I want you to do some stuff with us at Saints, more on the commercial side. So I did that, combining that with my own business stuff. And I hadn't really planned to get into coaching. I'd always coached at junior level. Obviously, I was still in love with the sport. And then 2016, I got approached about coming on board with England, dealing with the best players in the country at all levels, from youth academy, England Knights and seniors. So that was an opportunity that I really couldn't refuse, and been part of that since. Obviously, this year is a big year heading into the World Cup.
Of course, and you mentioned Saints, so you spent the vast majority of your career with St Helens. How do you reflect upon those years? Because you won such a lot. You I think you scored 100 tries, 100 goals, 1,000 points. How do you look back now? Did you take a moment just to reflect on those years?
Yeah, you look back obviously when you retired, and you when it's all happening, you're in the moment. You don't think about the successes. You plan for the next game. And looking back at the career I had, some of the games that I played in, and the things that we won, was memorable times, and just had so much fun doing it. We got paid for doing something we loved, for keeping fit with 25 of your best mates. It was the perfect job. So yeah, reflecting back on that, there's nothing will ever match running out there, in a grand final and picking them trophies up as a player. But unfortunately, it comes to the end for everybody.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, because 31 does sound quite young. What's the sort of usual length of a career for a rugby league player?
Well, it's one you get asked quite a bit. It's and I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's more how many games you've played. I broke into like first grade at 16, 17. And played back-to-back, international for 10 years, going on 400 games. So there's players who come out of rugby, maybe mid-30s, late 30s, who've played less games than I played. So I think it's more the toll on your body of one, the amount of games you played and how you played the game. Obviously there's different positions, there's different impacts on players throughout the game, and I was in the middle. I was one who obviously had to get stuck in.
Because it looks to me, I mean, I've only played rugby at sort of school, and with being from Liverpool, you kind of either play football or you don't do anything at all, frankly. But it always seemed to me to be surely one of the most challenging sports, because you've obviously got the heavy sort of cardio element to it, but you've also got the physical contact element and the strength element, as well as all the tactical parts to the game. Bearing in mind that you reached the top of the sport, what was your requirements in terms of training and fitness and strength?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot, and as you say, you need all them elements to make it into the professional game, and certainly make it to the top. You need the speed, the strength, the skill, the agility, the fitness, everything else that you mentioned. So the different elements of training, what you've got all combined together to, there's all the individual parts, but then obviously the stuff you do as a team to be successful. But that was something that really suited me. I come into rugby as an 8-year-old. My dad played. I never played amateur, so we used to go to games. But I actually didn't want to play rugby. There was a new team in Warrington in Oldham where we lived. We're advertising for new players to come along to a training session, and my younger brother wanted to go, and I got told, "You're going with him." Now, I'd followed my eldest brother Lee, who we spoke about before, who's the red in the family. He was a big Liverpool fan, playing football down at Failsworth, and I wanted to do that. I got made to go to this rugby session. I remember kicking and screaming all the way there, but that first hour, I knew it was the game for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was pretty decent at it, and I just loved the physical side of it. And the nature of the sport, and literally never looked back from that minute.
And what was it about? You've mentioned there that the first hour was the real deal maker for you. What was it about the sport which really captivated you?
Probably the physical side of it. I was the middle one of 3 brothers, so I was used to scrapping and fighting and wrestling, and challenging myself, and it was that. It was the physicality, and obviously the way the game is played. Really, really enjoyed it, and went on at the end of that year to captain Greater Manchester Youth under 9s from the year below. So it was a game that I took to pretty well, and I've always obviously, as I say, I'm one of 3 brothers. All we did was sport, and I've always been very, very competitive. I want to be the best at everything that I do, and that's never changed. That's still to this day. I want to win everything, and I think that was planted really early in me, within my rugby career, that you work hard and I want to be the best.
How, therefore, along the way, did you deal with times where there was frustration or there was comparative failure? I mean, clearly you didn't have much of that. You had lots of success, but as someone who strives to win, how did you and how do you deal with the times when you don't?
I mean, I was very, very lucky that there was very, very few of them times. Everything seemed to go pretty well for me. I mean, I signed professional terms with Warrington at 14 years old. And I was always very, very single-minded in what I wanted to achieve. And I got into training quite early, probably at 10, 11, years old. I had a great mentor at the gym that I trained at, a guy called Ken Wilson, who really got me into like the discipline, dedication of training and how to train. There's no point going training and being half-hearted with it. It was train to improve. And I got in that mindset really, really early. So probably the most difficult thing as a youngster wanting to make it in sport was probably the sacrifices that you had to make. Going out with your mates when, going to parties or whatever, when you've got to go training or you've got a game the day after. But that was stuff that didn't bother me. I knew where I wanted to be. I knew where I wanted to go with this, and everything went pretty seamlessly.
It's interesting because a number of the sports champions, the athletes we've had on the podcast, have said exactly that. We had Bianca Walkden on, who's a triple world championship taekwondo fighter, and she almost word for word said what you did, that she had to make sacrifices, but they sort of didn't feel like sacrifices because there was that real commitment, but also that real joy in finding the purpose. Yeah. Was that how it was for you?
Yeah, 100%. And the enjoyment of being able to do something that you love doing anyway, and just seeing them progressions up that ladder. And yeah, it was absolutely no regrets. No, and that I think that's my biggest thing. Even though my career did come to an end quite abruptly and prematurely at 31, but I'd achieved everything that I wanted to achieve, and I can look back on that, and I was lucky I got out healthy as well.
Yeah,
which you see a lot of players don't know anything else, and literally rugby's been their life. They've never really, even though it's coming. Certainly the nature of the game that age is probably dropping. The more and more impact, and the quicker, the bigger, the stronger the players are becoming. With the science behind the sport as well and the training, that age is going to drop. And now players need to prepare for that. You can't play forever. And there's a long life. It's funny, you see people who come into jobs, who go through university, they work their way through a progression, and their career starts at late 30s, 40. Ours is finished, and that's got to start again. Way. So, that's my advice to any players now is plan for that time, because it will come.
And is the support for players
there is now.
The clubs?
There's a lot more from that now, from the governing body, from the RFL, from RL Cares, and the clubs as well. And I think the more and more younger players that are getting on, qualifications or getting other interests, which I think is healthy as well, to have something where they can take themselves away from rugby, from the pressures, from maybe bad form, whatever. If they've got other interests where they can put the mind into that, I think it's a healthy thing to have.
I agree with you, because what's very difficult is to maintain intensity without any sort of break. Did you have something which you were able to, another hobby or another part of your life which allowed you that escape from the intensity?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had the business side of things, or always looked into doing different things.
So when did you first sort of have your first venture into business?
Sort of like got into properties, a few properties quite early. I had real good advice. My dad from a financial background, and I always had good advice from being a young kid. When I signed my first contract at Warrington, it was straight away, bricks and mortar. I bought my first house at 17. And it come from that. But I've always been into other sports. I'm a big golfer. Love me golf. So just finding things to, take your mind off. I wasn't really somebody who ever worried. I never worried about form. I never worried. The worst thing for a player, and I found this out at the back end of my career, is injuries. Is when you can't do the job that you're employed to do. When you can't do the job that you love. That's the frustrating side. I spent 2 years literally in a gym on my own, doing rehab on a bike, on a rower, while the boys are out on the field having a laugh and playing. And it's a very, very lonely place when you just want to be out there. And obviously you're not running out there on the field, on games in front of the fans. And that's the most difficult part, I think, for any professional sportsman, is injuries.
And 2 years is a heck of a long time. How did you, from a psychological perspective, bearing in mind this love you had for the sport, and not just for the sport, but you've made clear that playing with your mates and that sort of thing was a big part of what drove you. How did you cope with those moments of sort of isolation and frustration?
It's frustrating. I never really let it get to me. I was always one. I've always seen, a lot of the boys thought I was sick with this, but I've always enjoyed training. I love training. I love punishing myself in the gym and working hard and feeling that benefit of training. And I'm very single-minded that, if I had an injury, the worst ones were, at the back end of my career, when there were little tweaks that would keep you out 2 weeks. Over that 2 years, I played games, but I was in, I was out, and that was the frustrating side, and I was playing well. But then you have a tweak in your calf and you're out for 2 weeks, and then obviously, fans are talking, are you coming to the end of your career? And that's the frustration of of a player, and when you know it, you are coming towards the pinnacle of your career. It's it's because it's something that you're so passionate about. And I was so fit. I knew I was in as good a shape as I'd ever been in throughout my career. But there were little things that were keeping me out of games, and I was playing well. It was that was the frustrating side of it. But as I said, I'd achieved everything I wanted to achieve, and then I looked at it as right. Let's start the next chapter.
And you obviously did that quite seamlessly. Was it towards the end of your career? Did you have a plan in terms of as soon as the rugby started to tail off, the business side would start to tick up? Was it as strategic as that?
Yeah, I mean, it was more obviously initially into the new role at Saints, where I still had an involvement with the game. I still had the connection with the players and the staff at the club. And I've always enjoyed business. I've always enjoyed meeting people. I've always enjoyed networking. I think I'm quite savvy with that sort of stuff. And I know one of the things you spoke about before in what makes people successful either in sport or business and that. And I'm massive that I think it's people skills. It's having that communication. It's having that bit of rapport with somebody. And I've always found that quite easy. Whether that was through, being throughout my career, doing the media side of things. Obviously, I was captain for every team that I played for, where you've got the media commitments, you're speaking to people, you're attending events, you're up on stage on awards nights, and that was something that I really enjoyed. So very, very fortunate that I could pretty seamlessly take that into life after playing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I completely agree with you on the importance of good communication, and that even sounds a bit formal. The importance of just being an engaging person and be able to speak with different people in different situations and get them on board with your point. It always fascinates me that as we grow up and we go through the school system, we're put through all these memory tests in terms of how good we are with algebra and how good we are with comprehension. But I was always like you. I always really enjoyed having a bit of a healthy row with someone, having a bit of a giggle with someone, talking, meeting new people. But that was never measured. Yeah. And I look now at some of the people who maybe had a tough time at school and didn't find a way out via sport and that sort of thing. And it's sometimes just really surprising me that it's 2022 and the school system isn't recognising just how critical something like being a good communicator is. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I just think there's so many more life skills that schools could teach, children. And, I know the subjects that we do, half of them, and I always say this, is half of them, you never use in life. You never use them. Where do they teach you about financial advice? Where do they teach you about having a mortgage? Where do they teach you about nutrition? I know they touch on things like that, but far more important in life. And as you said, communication skills, that's something that's improved in our sport in regards to players, with more interaction with the media, a bit more media training for when they might get man of the match. And, we've seen a few bloopers over the years when it's clearly somebody who's never done any media training, never done much with the media or, public speaking, when all of a sudden they get man of the match and they're thrown in front of a Sky TV, in front of a live audience. And we've seen some classics over the years. But I think players are a bit more aware of that now. And I think it's just being put in that uncomfortable situation. I do a lot of dinners, a lot of after dinner speaking and corporate events. And when I first did it, I couldn't think of anything worse. I hated it. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it and thoroughly enjoy it now. And I think that's just by doing it. It's just putting yourself in that uncomfortable position to learn.
There's something in that, isn't there? I'm really interested in this, that when you're operating within your comfort zone, you're never really going to learn new skills. And also there will come a point where you realise you're not fulfilled. And I believe that there are some skills that you learn only by doing difficult things, by doing things which make you anxious or make you worried or cause you pain.
Yeah. I'm one of them. If somebody asks me to do something and it's not really something that the easiest way of doing it and of learning is just say yeah, just say commit to it, put yourself in that thing, and then you've got to learn it, you've got to do it, and that's how I pretty much got into the speaking. Was, it was a good opportunity. If it was something that was going to help me in my life after playing or business, because that's what business is about. It's about meeting people, connecting with people. There's a lot of people give the same service, give the same product. Yeah, it's on price, but they'd rather deal with somebody that they connect with, or somebody they trust, or somebody they like,
and someone who impresses them.
Yeah, and that for me, if you're going to be successful, you've got to learn to be comfortable doing that. And as I say, I put myself in that position. Didn't really like it, but it paid off.
And just on this issue of comfort zones, when you first started to play rugby professionally, and it was clear that was going to be the next chapter in your life, how do you train for? Do you train for rugby by playing rugby, or is the gym work, is the cardio work involved?
Yeah, it's massive. Training is massive. You can't learn, certainly on the professional game. You can't learn on the. I mean, obviously you've been signed because you've got ability anyway, but you don't learn in games. You get better by playing. There's nothing like playing that will test you. But our game is massive, and I'm a big advocate of that in coaching, of core skills. The basic things win games. Your catching, your passing, your tackle tech, your kicking techniques. The simple things that all put together, make the best players. So there is nothing like doing your core skills, your grip, your pass, your tackle, and repetition of just drilling them, and then obviously the physical side of it, of your weights, your speed work and everything else to back that up.
So are you lifting weights
during that period? Gym's massive in rugby. The lads will do 3-4 gym sessions a week. Big sessions. And pre-season is, there's some monster sessions that are doubled up. In days where there might be skill sessions and weights in the morning, and a games con session, conditioning in the afternoon. So the big days, there's a lot of commitment, but it's doing something that you enjoy. And I've always enjoyed that. When that feel good factor of, I've never stopped training since the day I retired, and I train as hard now as I did when I played, because I love that feeling. I love that feeling of it's probably more vanity now than performance. But it's that self, respect that you get from training and being fit. And I always enjoyed it when I trained, and when you're pretty decent and you're setting standards within gyms and testing, and it's a nice feeling.
And also, I mean, whilst we're all getting a bit older and we want to maintain how we look, there's nothing like pushing yourself, if it's physically or if it's in your career or in any way. There's nothing like pushing yourself as hard as you can to make you feel your best.
Yeah. No, brilliant. It is 100%. And I know we're going to touch on it, of the stuff I've done for the charities. And a lot of that has been, when I got into doing the stuff with the Ste Prescot Foundation, a lot of it was to give myself, not only to help Steve and his foundation, but to give myself a goal, something to train for, to maybe do an event, give you some sort of end result to make you train every day and to push yourself and to be fit. I've done some amazing events over the years, and 2015 I did the Marathon Des Sables, which is
did you?
Yeah, which is an ultra. So that's equivalent of 6 marathons in 5 days across the
Sahara
Desert.
We've had a couple of we've had Ian Jones on. I think he's doing it now, or he's doing it. He's an ultra marathon runner, but he's doing the Marathon Des Sables. I think it's about now, or maybe it might be sort of February, March. How was that?
Yeah, it was. You know what? I did it with a mate of mine, and we loved it. We laughed all the way around it. It's something that we really wanted to do. It's something that I'd spoke about with Steve. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2013, but it was something that was on our radar because every year these challenges got more and more difficult, and it was one that we spoke about. Unfortunately, Steve never got to do that, but we did it in the name of the Ste Prescot Foundation, and it was a mega event. It's something that I've watched. I remember watching the documentary when I think James Cracknell did it in about 2010. I remember watching the documentary, and that's what I say about this mindset of, people think you retire and you let yourself go now, and you don't have to put yourselves in them dark places. I love them dark places. I love that where you're going to break yourself. It's just, I don't know, it's just something built in that I enjoy. I enjoy that challenge, and signing up to things like that after playing kind of was my fix.
Do you know what? It's interesting that, because I think I always start, when I'm thinking about the future or I'm thinking about the present, I always start on the basis that life's not easy and it's not supposed to be easy. And you can make that same statement about business, you can make that statement about sport, but that it's the ability to keep moving forward through difficult situations, which not only defines real success, but also it creates all of the raw material, both for future success for yourself and for you to impart to others.
Yeah, definitely, and I think resilience is and it's a big part of what I had as a player and what some of the stuff you had to go through. And I'll talk about the times through injuries. Is that resilience to not go, I've had enough of this, and I'm calling it a day. And I did in the end, but that was more a tactical move of the moving on to the next chapter of my life. I think there's being smart as well, but it's also that resilience to get back in the gym, get fit, and push yourself to get back out there and doing what you love. And as you say, you get that in business. You get tough times, but you can't throw the towel in.
No, you can't. And it's I think what I was trying to tell people is that to feel frustrated and anxious and disappointed is part of that struggle, but that if you're able to find a solution to that struggle, you can then scale that throughout your life.
Yeah, I think that's where the rewards come. If you've done it easy and you've not had to challenge yourself, do you get the same feeling at the end of it when you've been successful? And I think that is a big part of it, and that was certainly a part of my life in playing when I had these tough times of coming back, and then when you're lifting a trophy with your teammates and you go, that was worth the effort.
Worthwhile. You mentioned Ste Prescot and the Ste Prescot Foundation, so I know he was an old friend and colleague of yours. Did Steve play for Saints as well?
Steve played for Saints. We never played together at club level. So Steve moved to Hull FC just as I joined Saints, but we played together at Lancashire and Great Britain. Steve was 4 years older than me, but a remarkable player. For those who don't know, he was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer in 2006, aged 32. What they didn't know, what a stubborn bastard he was, though, because they didn't give him so long. But he lasted till 2013 and beat the cancer that it said was unbeatable. And now there's new procedures that Steve was the first to endure. Major transplant surgery that's saved numerous lives since. So
is that right?
I think that is probably his biggest legacy. As well as Ste Prescot Foundation is going strong. They're probably on the £2 million mark of money raised over, since Steve set it up in 2007. You've
mentioned he was a very gifted rugby player, good bloke as well.
Yeah, great fella. Lovely family. I mean, obviously, I still speak to Lindsay, his wife, and his two boys, who are still heavily involved with the foundation. And his lads, certainly Taylor, the eldest, has kind of picked up the baton now. He's the talisman really of the foundation in leading all the tough challenges, and he's an unbelievable athlete himself. So the foundation goes from strength to strength, and it's great that Steve's name is used daily. We're not just within Rugby League, within St Helens and the Northwest and all over the country, and he got the biggest accolade in the Man of Steel award, which is the Super League Player of the Year is now the Ste Prescot MBE Man of Steel Award. So that will be used like the Lance Todd Award and the Harry Sunderland, iconic names, iconic, awards within our sport. And Steve's got that now forever.
He certainly has. And of course, you were recognised in 2018 with an MBE yourself, both to your services to rugby, but also your services to charity. Tell me about that experience. How did you first learn of it? And what happened?
It was actually in 2013 I got it.
Sorry.
Yeah, 2013. I was playing in the Dubai Sevens for another charity, joining Jack, who's one of my friends who played at Wigan, Andy Johnson. His son was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So they set up a charity, which we had a Legends team playing in the Dubai Sevens every year. So I was actually over in Dubai and I was training, come off the field there, you pick your phone up and my wife had rung me. So I phoned her back and she says, I don't know how to tell you. She said, you've got a letter from the Queen and that. I said, I knew she'd opened it, obviously. So I said, you've been awarded, the MBE. Obviously, you have to keep it to yourselves until they announce it on New Year's Eve. But I knew straight away that could cost me a fortune.
And did you tell the boys? Did you get any stick?
So no, I couldn't tell anybody there and then until I had to keep it on the QT till obviously it was announced on New Year's Eve. So it was a house party on New Year's Eve, and I didn't tell anybody, just let it come up on Sky Sports. It was nice. I mean, I got it for services to Rugby League and to charity. The Rugby League is nice and it's great. You get recognition for an outstanding career, but I was a fortunate one in that of being able to do something that I thoroughly enjoyed. It meant more to me probably for the work that we did with the charity and certainly the Ste Prescot Foundation.
That comes across. Let's just wind the clock back a little bit to your career in rugby, because what's interesting to me is during your years of real success, it was 2000s when it was the time when in the game of football, sport of football, the wealth in that game was going just absolutely bonkers. How would you compare the sort of the riches that we hear about in the Premier League and the fact that they're so under the spotlight and the sponsorships and the TV? How do you compare and contrast rugby league during that period?
Very different financially. Anyway, certainly from a player's point of view. No, I think we were very lucky, and you see some of the stuff that the Premier League footballers go through, and it's astronomical amount of money that they earn. But it's also the negative side that they get, and the stuff in can they live a normal life out in the public? And I think where we were lucky that you're on the highest level within your sport. Running out there at Old Trafford in front of 90,000 people and Wembley, being able to do that, but then you can easily drift into normal life. And don't get me wrong, we'd love rugby league to be like the Premier League in regards to notoriety of the players and certainly the finances within the sport. But yeah, obviously very, very different financially. We don't get me wrong, at the top level, you earn well in comparison to normal daily working jobs, and we were fortunate and as I say, to be paid for doing something that you thoroughly enjoy.
But without some of the downside. Mm. In terms of the game of rugby, in terms of the sport, one of the things, and we talked about this just off camera, that I think is noteworthy, is that where football, and not just football, but a number of other sports, have failed in terms of supporting the LGBTQ community. Well, sorry, that's probably that's not fair. Not so much failing to support them, but they haven't provided a platform for professional players to come out. Yeah. Rugby hasn't been like that, and of course, rugby has openly gay players, or has had. I mean, the one who springs to mind immediately, I know he's rugby union, is Gareth Thomas. We've had Ian Roberts, and also Keegan Hurst, who I think is still continuing his career.
Yeah, I think Keegan's still at Wakefield. Obviously, he was at Batley, I think, when he first come out as gay. I think we're very fortunate, and I spoke before about, I think, the respect that our game has I think it was probably for Keegan very comfortable coming out to rugby league people about his sexuality, because I think we've always been a game that supports our own. The game is very respectful in regards to officials, to fans. I always speak about the Magic Weekend. We have the Magic Weekend at St James's Park in Newcastle, where we take all 12 Super League teams over a weekend. There's 6 games over the weekend, so 12 lots of fans who just mingle. The atmosphere is fantastic, and I think that's through the respect that the game gets, from our own. And you see when there's tough times within our sport, the likes of Rob Burrow with the MND, when he was diagnosed, Danny Jones from Keighley, who passed away through a heart attack on the field, and the way that the Rugby League community pulled together to help our own, and obviously the Ste Prescot Foundation. And I think they're very, very tight-knit. So I think when Keegan came out, and I don't know whether Gareth Thomas was actually down at Wales Crusade. I don't know whether he'd already come out.
I think he'd retired.
He'd already come out because obviously he finished his career in Rugby League.
Of course
he did. He went to Celtic Crusaders. I think and you know what, in today's world, it shouldn't even be blinked at anyway. I coach. I've had the pleasure of coaching a lot of the England women. And a lot of the England women are gay. There's partnerships within the team. It's great. It's great to meet with different people and who've got different interests and sexualities.
Absolutely.
It's nobody else's business anyway. So
of course it is. How can rugby help other sports in terms of embracing that living and breathing inclusivity and providing a respectful platform for people to come out and identify as who they are and live their lives as they choose?
Yeah, I think we do that. I think we do that already. I think the inclusivity of rugby league is something that we always shout about. You've only got to look at the game at the moment, and then obviously the upcoming World Cup, and a big thing of what the World Cup in regards to promoting the Rugby League World Cup, obviously, which was going to be in 2021, it was pushed back to this year, is the inclusivity of that. You've got the men's team, you've got the women's team, you've got the wheelchair team, you've got the PDRL, you've got the LDRL, the physical disability and the learning disability. And just to see every, disability, ability, sexuality, all get a chance to play on the highest level and be admired. And I think our game has always led the way in that.
I think so. And perhaps that needs to be identified a little more by, I don't know if it would be by the government, I don't know if it would be by other sports, but it seems to me that the sport of rugby has been able to pull that off without really shouting and sort of showing it off, so to speak. They've just gone on with their business.
And I think it's come from the values that are instilled within our sport. I think it comes from that. It's not just a recent thing, I think. And it's one I always look at football and I always think, the referees, the stick that they take from these players, the lack of respect. They're out there to do a job, and referees should be respected. You're never going to make the right decisions, and you're never going to please everybody as a referee. And our game, you wouldn't dare say anything to a referee because he's got 2 things in his pocket that'll soon shut you up. One's a yellow, one's red. and they use them. I just don't get it in football where just, they'll soon get sick of walking off. Yeah. Maybe they'll pipe down.
I remember there was a game at Anfield last season. I'm a big Liverpool fan, and we were playing Atletico Madrid, the Champions League, and an Atletico Madrid player did, it was quite a bad foul, and he got a yellow card. But then he got himself sent off because he got off, and the ref he showed him the yellow card, but the ref was calling him over, wanted to have a word, calm down. The fella just kept backing away and wasn't even giving the ref the respect of an eye contact, and the red card came out. And to be honest with you, we won the game, but it spoiled the game because it was just daft. You don't want to compete against a team with an impediment through something so petulant as that.
No, and you know what? When you get a great game as well, that's the only thing that's going to be in the press and bespoke about. And there's no need for it. And for me, that's not sport. Sport should be, being role models for the younger generation coming through, the kids who are there on the sidelines or watching on TV. That's what sport's about. We're there to entertain. We're there to enjoy. It's not life and death.
No, that's right. I wanted to ask you just a question about how you saw risk, because you're in business now, but you've also competed at the highest level at a sport which has its risks to it, sort of physically in particular. Mm-hmm. And now you've got involved in different assets. You're testing yourself in a number of different ways. And all of that carries some risk. Do you consider yourself a risk taker?
Yeah. I think to come through in rugby league, I think there's got to be a certain switch that says I'm a risk taker. I have been a risk taker, and I'm a very much an adrenaline junkie anyway. I like that sort of stuff, and maybe in business I've gone for a few things. Some have come off, some haven't. But yeah, I think life's for living, isn't it? And that's where I see it. And I deal with people. One of my good friends, a guy called Jimmy Gittins. He's a good friend of mine. He does a lot within the charity side now. He broke his neck in 2010, I think it was. And that was, he went into a tackle, he ducked straight into somebody's, he banged his head, he thought he was ducking through a gap, and the defender stepped in and he snapped his neck, and he was quadriplegic since. And, he doesn't, you ask Jimmy and you say, would you play if you know what you know now? And he goes, 100%. He says, and if you give me a pair of boots now and I could get them on, I'd play now.
What a man.
And, he's an inspirational fella. And, but do you know what? We can all bubble wrap ourselves, can't we? And do nothing, and life would be boring.
It would. And I mean,
there's calculated risks. It's calculated, and I think a big calculation certainly in rugby. That's why physically you've got to be in the best condition you can be in, and I think the ones who get caught out at times are the ones who take shortcuts on that. And I always, there's calculated risks, and my calculation was be as fit as you can. Be bulletproof, really, going into games as bulletproof as you can be.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how for that to put yourself in the strongest position in a game like rugby, that would be key. In business, I'm very much a risk taker, but like yourself, I like to take measured risk. Yeah. But what gets me out of bed in the morning is that risk, is the fact that I'm going to be faced with challenges because I operate largely outside of my comfort zone. And the pleasure I get is in sometimes deciding not to do something, waiting, and then doing it twice as hard, and working with my team to take decisions on risk. And I'm with you. I'm a bit worried in society that we're not encouraging people to operate outside of their comfort zones and to push themselves to the very best of their ability. Yeah. One of the stories I was telling a guest a couple of weeks ago was I've got two girls who are 10 and 8, and on their school sports day, everyone gets a medal. So it means that there are no winners and no losers, but also everyone goes away with a nice shiny medal. And I just remember when I first saw that, I thought, no, because it's not so much I want my kids to win everything. I don't. I want them to know what losing feels like.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. I hate that. I hate that everybody's a winner, because it's not, respect the winner and everybody. What's the old saying? You either win or learn.
Yes.
You don't lose. You'll gain something from it, and you can't take away that competition. That's what drives people. And this politically correct sports day is not for me. It's not something I agree with. And I get there's in sports day, kids are made to do it, and some are not athletes, and you're trying to not include these children or whatever. But you've got to acknowledge the winners. You've got to celebrate the winners, and you've also got to learn how to lose.
Absolutely.
And how do you challenge? What if that person comes second, just slightly? Would that encourage them to work harder to try and get that last little bit to come first?
That's right. And the other thing is, I wasn't great at sport when I was young. I always enjoyed it, but I wasn't great at it. But that was the fact that I very rarely won at anything on the sports field was helpful, because that's what guided me down more of an academic path. I thought, bloody hell, if I have to make a career as like a footballer or something, it's not happening. So again, it was instructive to me because I was able to achieve success in other areas and to prioritize those areas. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if I was just told everyone's kind of exactly as good as one another, and I wasn't actually pushed to win on the basis of competence, I'm not sure I'd be where I am.
No, I totally agree with you, and I just think that there's so many lessons to be learned from that, and it's a very different. I never wanted to revert to be one of them people who've saying, back in my day when I played or when I was a kid and all that, but it's so very different.
Yeah.
You see kids and I believe a lot within sport in children now is a lot they do on movement skills. We had movement skills where you're out on the street, you're playing sport literally 12 hours a day, climbing trees, jumping over fences, going on roofs for the ball. You don't see that with kids as much these days. And I get there's different risks, and there's also a lot more interest in regards to what they're carrying about. The phones in the pocket, the Xboxes and everything else. And this interaction with friends can be online now. Be sat in the bedroom doing it. But for me, who's grown up, and I get not everybody's into sport, but I just think it just gives you so much. And exercise and healthy living, we just need more of it.
We do. And if you look at the basics of what, let's think about sport first of all. Fresh air, encouragement to exercise, encouragement for good nutrition, plenty of water, respect, teamwork, friendship. You put all those things together and you think, that's where we should be driving kids towards, and you're not going to win all the time, but winning should be celebrated. Yeah,
of course it should. It should be celebrated, but it shouldn't be all about winning. You see you see some coaches within the community game who it's their ego. They want to win everything, and they'll only pick certain players in certain positions. That shouldn't be children's sport. It should be like encouraging improvement on everybody, but again, inclusivity and get everybody involved. It's not just about getting that W, that win. And that's something that we see in the community game that some coaches are obsessed with. But for me, it's just get more kids participating, get more kids out there. Like you say, the friendships that you meet. All my friends have come through rugby, literally. When I finish playing, question you get asked is like, "Oh, do you not miss the crack in the changing rooms and that?" I went from the day I retired, I went and joined a boxing club. I've always been into boxing and joined a local boxing club and it was like when I moved from Warrington to Saints. You moved from one changing room, one great set of lads who you still keep in touch with, to Saints, to another great set of lads who I still keep in touch with, and then to a boxing club with another great set of lads, with all the same interests. And sport is that kind of that common theme. And
healthy
I think
competition.
Yeah, but it's, you're all into the same thing, and it's active. And, when you've done a good training session and you all feel great, you're high-fiving everybody, and then you go home and you feel great about yourselves. And exercise for me is just the endorphins you get from it. And I'd push everybody down that route. And I get there's different levels, but just get out there, fresh air, and do something.
Correct. Talk to me about when you went from Warrington to St Helens. For anyone who's not familiar with Lancashire and with rugby in Lancashire, I could have got this wrong, but first of all, Warrington and St Helens are not very far away. No. There is, I know, quite a rivalry, a healthy rivalry. What's it like, sort of crossing sides as you did?
Yeah, I mean the rivalry between the two clubs now is far greater than it was when I played. Only for the fact that they're two of the biggest clubs now. Warrington have had a lot of investment, and they're always big games. They are probably two of the 3 or 4 biggest sides. Saints are number one. They're 3 times champions over the last 3 years. But Warrington are right up there and big spenders within the game. Probably when I played, Warrington were just outside of that. And partly why I left. I'd come back from a tour with Great Britain in '96, playing with the likes of Bobby Goulding from St Helens, Andrew Farrell at Wigan, Dennis Betts, players who were playing in Challenge Cup finals, who were winning championships. That's all I wanted. I wanted to be on the biggest stage. I wanted to test myself against the best. Warrington was never about financial gain. Warrington looked after me unbelievably. I think in the between 14 and then joining as a 16-year-old in the first grade in the full-time era. I had numerous contract improvements, and it was never about earning more money. Financially, the club was struggling. There were times where, monthly we were chasing salaries, might be a couple of days late or whatever. But the biggest one was we got back from that tour, and then it was the following year, and we sold one of our best players, a guy called St Harris, who was probably, for me, the best player in Super League at the time. And now he asked for a transfer, and the club sold him. Now, for me, if a club's got ambition to rival these top teams and play in these big games, you don't sell the best players. Certainly if you've got one of the best players in the competition, you invest in these guys and you invest in more players. We couldn't do that at Warrington because financially
it just wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
No.
So I had a great relationship with the chairman, a guy called Peter Hyan, and I asked to go and see him, and I explained this to him and just said, I don't see me being successful at Warrington. He respected it. He said, I fully appreciate the way you've gone about it. And to be honest, the sale of you will probably save the club. So he said, I'll grant you a transfer request. So I went on the transfer market. It was funny, I got the first phone call I got when that went public was a guy called Brad Rosser, who was the chief exec of the London Broncos. Now, this was at the time when, it's probably 6 months after Richard Branson had just bought the Broncos.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So he said, would you be willing to come and speak to us? So I said, 100%. I'll speak to everybody and then decide what's the best move for my career. So he said, right, what are you on tomorrow? So we didn't have anything on. So he said, right, we're going to send a limo to your house. I lived in Springhead in Oldham, up in Saddleworth. And he said, we're going to send a car to your house, take you down to Barton, airspace in Manchester. We're going to send Richard's helicopter for you, fly you down to London. So we'll show you all the facilities at the Stoop at where Harlequins play now. Show you a house in Richmond where you'll live. He says, and then it's on to meet the man himself at his house in Holland Park for dinner. So I remember getting off the phone and told my wife, and the Broncos were probably a top 6 side at best. I told Lindsay, and she says, you're not signing for London, are you? I said, Lindsay, there's not a chance I'm signing for London, but we're definitely going there tomorrow. So anyway, the day after, the car comes down to Barton, big red Virgin helicopter, landed at Kempton Park, where he was met by Tony Curry, who was the Australian coach of the Broncos. And then it obviously showed us all the facilities, training facilities, went to a nice little gaff in Richmond where they would relocate us. And then it was on to meet the main man. So
Richard Branson?
Yeah, we pulled up at this gaff in Holland Park, £8 million house. Anyway, we arrived and they said, Richard's in a meeting in like the conservatory at the back. He said, so he'll come in when he's done. So we're sat in like a lounge area. It's like a U-shape of couches, a little coffee table in front. And the next thing, he just walked in. And it was deathly silent. And he just walked straight over to me, lifted my leg onto this coffee table and started shining my shoe with his shirt. And he said, so what have I got to do to get you? I thought, how good's this?
I tell you what, he clearly wants
19-year-old Scally from Oldham, and I've got a billionaire polishing my shoes here, trying to sign me. But it was that impressive, the ambitions and the things that London wanted to achieve and the players they were talking about signing and investing. I actually agreed personal terms with London that day. All that was to be negotiated then was the transfer fee, what the club had to pay Warrington. Now, transfer fees had pretty much gone by then with the Bosman ruling.
Yeah.
When you're out of contract you can
just
walk.
go. Yeah.
So they had to, absorb a certain fee. And Warrington had put £1 million on my head, which in rugby terms had never been done before. It was, I think the record at the time was Martin of Fire, which was £500,000 or whatever. So it was never going to be £1 million, but it was, Warrington wanted a substantial, amount, and that was still to be negotiated. And then the following week, St Helens come in for me. My only reason for leaving Warrington was to play on the biggest stage, to win trophies. Saints had just done the 96, 97 back-to-back Challenge Cup wins. Probably by far the best team in Super League. I'd played with most of the players that were there, all the international players at Great Britain, and I just thought that's a move that I can't refuse. And I signed for Saints the following week. And I look back at it, and I think 17 major trophies we've won in my term at St Helens, and it's the only reason I moved. Was to be successful and playing big games. And I look back again and see the grand finals, Challenge Cup wins, World Club Challenge wins, and
you won everything, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a special 10 years.
Would you have earned more money at London Broncos?
The negotiations, so with the salaries was pretty much the same.
Got you.
Because obviously, I told Saints what I wanted, what I'd agreed with London. But to be honest, Warrington looked after me unbelievably.
What I was. I mean, it's good that you were able to negotiate that deal with St Helens, but you're a living, breathing embodiment, aren't you? Of that, if you follow success, if you push yourself to actually achieve the accolades in the sport you're in, you have better memories than just having a bigger bank account. Because if you look at what happens in football, I'm not going to talk badly of Newcastle United Football Club. I've got lots of mates who are Geordies, and obviously they just had this new investment from the Middle East. That sounds really exciting, and I think really what they're talking about is building, in due course over a series of years, something, a project which will compete with, say, Manchester City, who've obviously done amazingly well with their investments. But there's a part of me which just thinks, if you're going to build sporting success on pure finance, where's the real, grassroots achievement in that? Where's the jumpers for goalposts type mentality? And it's just a little bit off-putting for me.
It's finding that balance, and of obviously it's a career and it's a short career, and you've got to make as much as you can, but you've also got to weigh up one, being happy. Are you going to be happy? If somebody had doubled my salary and they said, right, but you're signing for the bottom club and you're going to get whooped every week. Yeah. It's going to be a long week every week, isn't it, in training? It's just walking out at a grand final, leading a team out that corner at Old Trafford to, 70, 80,000 fans, whatever it is a money can't buy experience, and you can never take that away from players who do it. Earning good money is great, but you've also got to get that balance between, being happy, being successful, and it's why you're in the sport. People have different reasons. I was in it because I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to win things. I wanted to earn a lot of money as well.
Sure,
but it wasn't my priority.
It's not what got you out of bed.
No. And I got the best of both worlds with signing for St Helens, and that was part of my reason for signing for them. I knew it was a place, it was a club that demands success, it was a club that invests in success, and it was a club that I was pretty much nailed on to get success, and we did.
And what a good decision. 2022, big year in your role as coach at England. So there's World Cup end of the year?
Yeah, so it's the World Cup at the end of the year, obviously. Unfortunately got cancelled, last year. So I'm on the England coaching staff, working with Sean Wayne, who's obviously the England head coach, Paul Wellens and Andy Last and Paul Anderson as well. So we look after the England Knights as well, which are in rugby union terms is like the Saxons, the up and coming players.
Right.
So we deal with a lot of the younger players. So part of my role throughout the year, because you don't get hands-on with the players because of Super League commitments and club commitments. It's not like rugby union where you have we'll have one mid-season test match, but it literally will be a couple of days before you get your hands on the players, and Sean does his magic with them, but you are limited. So a lot of it is, interaction with the coaches, keeping an eye on the players, doing a bit of one-on-one feedback with the players throughout the year, and looking at which players are in form and up for contention for playing in a World Cup. So there's a lot of incentive for the players in Super League this year.
Yes, there must be. What's your specific role? Are you coaching them physically in terms of, or is it from a tactical perspective?
Yeah, it's not like rugby union where you're either attack or defence or line outs or whatever. We're pretty much all hands on deck, and so I'm just part of the Sean's support team in one of the assistants for that. So again, just doing a lot with the players throughout the year, one-on-one, and just keeping an eye on players. And then obviously I'm assistant with the Knights as well, so hopefully we'll get a couple of games in at the end of the year, maybe with some of the teams that are over as a warm-up game for the World Cup as well. And then obviously going to a big World Cup with England, and hopefully big successes. So the 4-year plan, which is now turned into a 5-year plan, from 2016 was win 3 World Cups for England, the men, the women, and the wheelchair.
That would be a fabulous achievement. And do you think in with a shout?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the men's, it's all on the day. We got beat in the last World Cup in 2017, 4-0. It was one try that separated the teams. So, we know if we can have a strong Super League season this year and players are on form and our best players are fit and healthy come the back end of the year, that we've got a good chance of winning that. It's going to be tough because there's some real good teams. Obviously, Australia, New Zealand. You look at like Tonga now, Fiji, Samoa, even Papua New Guinea. There's some strong teams, and it will be the best World Cup I think that we've ever seen in regards to competition.
When you're working with this new crop of the leading athletes in the game of rugby league, how do you compare them as a group to the teams that you played in?
I mean the game has changed a lot. Of the way that technically and tactically is a lot different. It's a lot more structured now than when we played. But I'm a believer. I'll always coach in my philosophies of skill, attitude, effort based, and it's been great working with Sean Wayne because he's very much the same. And I've learned a hell of a lot of Sean over. We've probably had some of the best times in the last 18 months. Because nobody had anything to do with COVID, so we were on Zoom calls. We were watching footage. We were just picking each other's brains. We were on Zoom calls for 3-4 hours at a time, and it was great when I can absorb something of so much of his knowledge and experience. But as such a successful coach, his philosophies are very, very simple. They're the basic things that win games. So it's a lot of effort-based stuff. It's a lot of core skill, and strength and size and speed. So it's very much looking forward to this year and what it brings, and hopefully it's successful Super League and then into a great World Cup.
Sean sounds a great leader. In due course, would you have an interest in the top job when he decides it's time to move on?
I think I don't think I'm hands-on enough within the game, as in the day-to-day stuff of coaching to ever go into that role. And it wasn't something that I ever aimed to do, because I enjoyed the business side of things as well. And this role allows me to do both, to give my input and experience on the rugby side and still be involved, but also be able to do the other side as well. And it's funny because I speak of Sean and I get on great with him, and he has the same, and he's one who speaks about, when I said about the players before having other interests outside of the game, I think it's healthy, and that's what he has. He does a lot of leadership talks. He has, he works with a lot of companies and corporate away from rugby, and it's something that he's passionate about. There's a lot of crossovers because a lot of what he speaks about through his experiences of coaching, but the life skills that he can teach and the crossovers that he can take into businesses that he's learned through sport, because there is so many crossovers in regards to, team building, leadership, cultures, discipline, man management, the different things which, I said before, the successful people, be it in business and sport, tend to have them.
Correct. Like that's what I've found. And also they have the ability to transfer those skills to different areas of their life. And that's certainly what you've done. So tell me a little about Evolve Brand Sport, because you've taken all of your skills you've built up in your sporting career, and you seem to be applying them very successful in business. So what do Evolve Brand Sport do?
Yeah, Evolve, we're a licensed merchandise manufacturing, mainly in the sporting industry. So we work with governing bodies, brands, in regards to, bespoke products or services. And I was very lucky that when I moved into the role I spoke about at Saints, when I finished playing, the chief exec there, Tony Colquitt, was in a previous life sales director for Gillette. So he signed me as a player on an endorsement deal with Gillette, and that's how we become friends. So I was a Gillette ambassador for about 5 years. So I'm always cliche, Evan. So me and Tony become really good friends, and then obviously he got me into the role at Saints, and then obviously when he left that, we set up Evolve. So from his background in marketing and sales, I've kind of jumped on the bandwagon with Tony. So we set Evolve up in, I think it was 2010 maybe, and then obviously Rhino Rugby League. So originally Rhino brand, the rugby brand, is mainly a rugby union brand. Tony was on the board of Rhino Group, and kind of got them into Rugby League. So we were the official ball of Super League for numerous years. But Rhino never really run with the league part of it. Very union-based, very southern-based company. So we just said, we're missing a trick here. So we took a license originally for Rhino Rugby League, run with that, and then an opportunity to buy it and own the company and separate that from Rhino Rugby as a group. So yeah, it's been really successful. Doing a lot in grassroots with community clubs. Obviously, a lot in the professional game as well. In kit and equipment for Super League. We do all the international teams. We do a lot with the World Cup. So we actually produce all the Created By Legacy programme, which was funded by Sport England and the Rugby League World Cup 2021. So they've put millions into the community game where they can bid for kit and equipment, and that all comes through ourselves at Evolve and Rhino. So it's been very good, and to be able to do that side of things but still be heavily involved in sport and other sports as well.
It must be a joy to combine the two so well. What's your specific role within the business? Do you get involved in marketing? Are you out selling, or are you strategic?
So I'm a director. So I own 50% of both Evolve and Rhino Rugby with Tony. Actual official job, no, I'm a director. I put money in, I don't take money out. Yeah. I think that's my job. No, but it's great. I mean, my job, to be honest, is being Paul Sculthorpe and going out and meeting people and networking, opening doors for our company. I do get hands on. I've just moved units now. I had a unit in Helens over in Halifax, and we've just moved over to the northwest now, which is far better, obviously, on in regards to travel, and far better location for our staff as well. So it's going really well. Forever growing and getting new opportunities because of the stuff that we do in the merchandising and the manufacturing. We're opening up other opportunities within other sports and the said governing bodies. So yeah, it's really enjoyable. And I've got some great people who work for us as well.
And that's the joy, isn't it, when you surround yourself with teams who inspire you and share your vision. So well done for that. We're reaching the time where I've got to think about letting you get on. But tell me, if we meet again in say 3 years' time, and I really hope we do, what will you be telling me about what the 3 years ahead has held for you?
Well, we've had an outstanding 2022. We won the World Cup. We went on the drink for about 3 weeks solid straight after that.
Well worthwhile, yeah, well earned.
Yeah. So 3 years later, I should be sober by then. Yeah, just, you know what? I enjoy every day. I enjoy getting up, and I think the things that I'm involved with, and spinning different plates. I have a few ambassador roles within different companies. I work with a company called Board RM, who are an online digital job board in recruitment. Based in Birmingham, so I work with them guys as well as a brand ambassador. Again, opening doors, opening networks, and sharing some of my stuff, the things I've learned throughout my career, with them guys and their clients as well. So every day is different. The week's diary is never the same. In regards to England stuff, I'm still involved at Saints as an ambassador and a bit on commercial. And then my own business interests as well. So it's great, and just thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, I think when you've packed your life full of the achievements and the challenges and the rewards and the satisfaction that you've been able to, Paul, sometimes the best plan for the future is to keep doing what you do well. And I mean, what's come across to me today is that not only are you someone who's been at the top of your game in everything you've done, but you've really had fun. You've enjoyed your life, and you're a great guy as well. So it's been such a pleasure having your company on the podcast, Paul. Wish you very best of luck with England at the World Cup. Best of luck with the businesses as well. Congratulations on your achievements to date, and do come back and see us, sir.
I certainly will do, mate. Thank you very much, Simon, for having me. And do you know what? When you go back and it's really enjoyable doing stuff like this, because you are talking about the stuff that you've loved doing for the last 20 years, and it brings back some special memories. So thank you for inviting me along.
Good man. It's Paul Sculthorpe.